A camel, not having drunk for several days, can do 30 gallons in a gulp. That's a lot of water to haul up out of a well. And Rachel was the one. She said, sure, sir, I'll give you a drink, and I'll water your camels for you too. And Eliezer says, you've done it. You've done Hesed. Now, what do Lot and Eliezer have in common? Abraham. Where did these two men get this concept of a passionate, undying devotion of a superior to an inferior, especially when it's undeserved? Where did they get it? I think they got it from Abraham. Abraham has had 25 years to reflect on God. Sarah, who is this God that we've run into here? He's not like any other God I've ever met. They're all in it for themselves. They use their worshipers. They manipulate their worshipers for their own pleasure. But this God, I mean, He didn't have to promise us all these things. And He didn't have to keep on being faithful when I lied about you twice. He didn't have to bless us when I chose the rocky hills instead of the lush valley. We don't have any word to express that, Sarah, do we? No, Abe, we don't. What do you think about Hesed? Sounds good to me. Well, I don't know. But as I say, here's Lot and here's Eliezer, and the only thing those two guys have in common is Abraham. Abraham had experienced something in God that was totally unexpected. I think we who have grown up in Christian West don't understand how shocking this book's concept of God really is. And it's in this word. So what about it? I'm grateful for this assignment because it gave me the opportunity to go back and look at Hesed in the Old Testament. And a number of things, some that I knew vaguely, some that I really hadn't thought about, came out, and I want to share those with you. At the bottom, Hesed is simple kindness. Kindness. You see it again in Ruth. Ruth says to her two daughters-in-law, girls, go on back home. I don't have any sons to give you. And may Yahweh deal kindly with you as you have dealt with me and the dead. I've met a God, Ruth, who is kind. And He'll treat you kindly. And then when Ruth comes back and Naomi says, where did you get all this grain? I mean, poor people, we're only supposed to be able to get the stuff in the corners of the field and the few stalks that the reapers drop. Where'd you get all that? And she says, well, I met this guy named Boaz, and he was really kind. And Naomi says, oh, praise Yahweh, who has not forsaken His kindness. I got to thinking about that. What is kindness anyway? And I went and looked it up in the dictionary. Sympathetic, friendly, gentle, benevolent, generous, right down at the bottom. No great towering theological concepts. Right down at the bottom is a God who is so free of self-seeking that he can be kind. Why is kindness disappearing from our culture? Because we're all being ruled by what's in it for me. If we are to be able to be kind, something has to happen in our souls to deliver us from that self-serving. What is Hesed? It is goodness. If you think about it, you're aware of the refrain that occurs especially in the Psalms. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, and his Hesed endures forever. Now, the Septuagint, the Greek translation, Greek has the same problem that we have. It doesn't have any words big enough to convey this amazing concept. So the Greek translators chose the Greek word eleos, which is mercy. Well, you can understand mercy is on the right track. But oh, Hesed is so much more than mercy. So we read that in the King James tradition. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good and his mercy endures forever. Yeah, right. What's next? Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good and his Hesed endures forever. To do Hesed is to do good. I think of Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof. And he's decided to permit his second daughter, Huddle, to marry Perchik, who is a revolutionary. No prospects whatsoever, except jail. And Goldie, Tevye's wife, is remonstrating with him. And Tevye says, but Goldie, he'll be good to her. That's a pretty good testimony for a son-in-law. What does that mean? He'll have her interests before his own interests. He'll have what serves her nature and character and person at the heart of his concerns. Here it is again. To be a good person in the sense that you do good for others is to be delivered from yourself. This God of Hesed is a God who has your, my, our best interests at heart. And notice that that's exactly the point where Satan made his insinuations in the garden. God is not good, Eve. He doesn't want what is your good. He doesn't want to do good for you. He wants what's good for himself. Liar. 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 But that lie has worked awfully well across the centuries, hasn't it? You can't trust God. He's not on your side. He doesn't want what's good for you. Oh, yes, he does. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, and his Hesed endures forever. What is Hesed? Hesed is compassion. And here again we come back to Exodus 34:6. Yahweh, Yahweh, the compassionate and gracious God. What is it to have Hesed? It is to have the genuine ability to get out of yourself and into another. Many words in their usages drift away from their etymologies. But this is one that has stayed real close. Compassion. To feel with. To have Hesed. To have Hesed is this ability to feel what another is feeling. I've always loved the little story that I heard years and years ago. These two little girls are sitting on the curb, just crying their eyes out. And a man stopped and he said, "What's the matter?" And the one little girl said, "She dropped her dolly and broke its head. And so she's crying." And the man said, and did you drop your dolly too?" No, I just stopped to cry with her." It's called compassion. No, I want to wall out your pain. I've got enough pain of my own. Don't ask me to share what's breaking your heart. Let me tell you what's breaking my heart. Have you ever been in those conversations? Compassion. Once again, you say, "Oswalt, you've got one string in your guitar." Yeah, I do, and it's become clearer to me in this study. What's Hesed about? Hesed is about being free of that consuming self-focus. And so, I think of those amazing, amazing verses. In many ways, some of the most stunning statements in the Bible. Lamentations, perhaps written by Jeremiah, but by someone who was there when Jerusalem was destroyed and all the hopes of a nation went down the tubes. Chapter 3 of Lamentations is a terrible chapter. God, you have set me up as your target and shot your arrows through my stomach. God, you have filled my mouth with gravel and made me break my teeth on it. But this I call to mind and therefore have hope. Yahweh's Hesed never ceases. His compassion never ends. They are new every morning. If God has brought this upon us, it does not mean that He is standing off saying, "I'm glad you're getting what's been coming to you. It's taken long enough." No, says this person. God, His teeth are being broken. His stomach is being penetrated by arrows. And a few verses later, "For Yahweh will not cast off forever. Though He causes grief, He will have compassion according to His Hesed." Because Hesed is what He is and what He is about, compassion flows from Him naturally and normally. Kindness, goodness, compassion. Oh, I've got to say one more thing. For me, the mark of compassion has always been the story of the woman taken in adultery. Now, I suspect that she was thrown down there and she's lying in a heap. And she listens as the footsteps go away. And finally, there are no more footsteps. What is she thinking? Is there no one left to condemn me? And Jesus is inside her head. Those are the very words Jesus says. Is there no one left to condemn you? Of course, her heart fell when he said that. She thought he was gone too. Neither do I condemn you. Go. Stop sinning. That's compassion. That's the ability. This is not about him. It's not about what the Pharisees had been trying to do to him. It's about her. And he's thinking her thoughts and saying her words. Compassion. What is Hesed? Hesed is about absolute dependability. Some 40 times, Hesed is coupled with one of two words. I haven't put them here, but one is emet and the other is emunah. Now, they don't sound like they're related to each other at all, but they are. Both of those words, emet and emunah, can be translated truth. Usually, in connection with Hesed, they are translated with faithfulness. Here's the end of Lamentations 3:23. This I call to mind and therefore have hope. Your Hesed never ceases. Your compassion never fails. They are new every morning. Great is thy truth. Is literally what it says. Now, both these words, emet and emunah, come from the same foundation, and that is that which is stable, that which is reliable. So we could translate it reliability. God is absolutely reliable. Amen. He is true to His Word. A few years ago that dawned on me. Why do we in the West believe in objective truth? Why do we believe that there is that in the world which is so, regardless of whether I like it or not, regardless of how I feel about it or think about it, it is so? Where did we get that idea? We call it objective truth. And why is it disappearing from our culture like water going down a drain? Because we are losing this book. You can see the Hebrews' thought pattern. God is true to His Word. He will keep His Word when it's not to His benefit. He is true. And He is the only creator. So then there is that in His universe which is true. So I want to say to you that truth began in an understanding of the person of God. Some of you have heard me say this before, but I'm up here, so I get to say it again. When Karen and I got married, I was on sort of an Anglican kick, and so I persuaded her dear Baptist pastor to use the Anglican ceremony. So I stood there in my white sport coat and my cummerbund. I'll tell you how long ago it was. And I said to her, I plight thee my troth. Now, actually, I didn't know the difference between a trough and a trough at that point. I just wanted the girl. What did I say to her? I pledge you my truth. I'll be true to you. When things are going up for you and down for me, I'll be true to you. When you're mad and I'm glad, I'll be true to you. When we don't have one red dime to rub between our fingers, I'll be true. And that's only possible, friends, because He is true. If you can trust God, then those around you can trust you. But if I won't trust God, my wife had better keep her bags packed. Hesed is about truth. Truth in relationships. Hesed, I keep getting ahead of myself here. Hesed is the foundation of righteousness and justice. Let him who boasts boast in this, that he knows that I am Yahweh who practices Hesed, justice, and righteousness in the earth. Hosea, I'll betroth you to me in righteousness and justice, in Hesed and compassion. Love that. God wants to give me an engagement ring. Oh, continue your Hesed to those who know you, and your righteousness to the upright of heart. Now, if you know a little bit about the Hebrew Bible and about the way Hebrew does poetry, you know that in this kind of a line, the second part is synonymous with the first part. So it's not Hesed and righteousness as two different concepts. It's Hesed is righteousness. Righteousness is Hesed. And those who know you are the upright of heart. So in this case, they're being coalesced. Hesed is righteousness? No. Righteousness is that gimlet-eyed, I'm going to do the right thing and I don't care how you feel about it. No. Righteousness is Hesed. What does that mean? I will do the right thing for you no matter what it costs me. In Isaiah chapters 40 to 55, almost every occurrence of God's righteousness is paralleled with His salvation. Was God right to send them into captivity? Oh, you better believe it. They'd been asking for it for about 1,000 years. Of course it was right for Him to send them into captivity. But it was not right for this kind of God to leave them in captivity. That's what Moses understood back there on Mount Sinai. God, it would not be right for you to simply enforce the terms of the covenant at this moment. And I sort of see a little smile on God's face. You got it, Moses. You got it. This is that righteousness that comes by faith. Now, again, I want to be careful here. But Luther didn't always do a good thing for us. Oh yes, there's the righteousness that comes by the law. I will do the right thing because I love God, and I will do this, and I will do it. And then there's the righteousness that comes by faith. Oh, thank God Jesus gave me His righteousness, and I can live like the devil now. Don't think so. Don't think so. There's a righteousness that is governed by self-serving. And there is a righteousness that is the expression of self-giving. One is the righteousness of the law, and the other is the righteousness that comes by faith. God's righteousness grows out of His Hesed. It grows out of His self-giving determination to do good to those who don't deserve it. And so does His justice. This is another one of these words. The word is mishpat. It's got a nice sound to it, doesn't it? Mishpat. It gets translated justice or judgment or judgments, but it's bigger than that. You know what? It says Solomon built the temple according to its mishpat. And it also says, do not walk in the mishpat of the Canaanites. What are we talking about? We're talking about a pattern. He built the temple according to its pattern. Don't live in the pattern of the Canaanites. Oh, God has created a world of order where people are not given the right to oppress one another. Why is it that oppression is wrong? Who says so? Where did we get the idea that it was? Why shouldn't I oppress you if I'm strong enough to do it? I mean, it's a dog-eat-dog world, folks. Where does that understanding of God's pattern of life that includes equity and fairness and caring for those who are not contributors, where does that pattern of existence come from? Well, I hope you're ahead of me. It comes right out of Hesed. It is because God is the kind of God He is that our forefathers could say the Creator has endowed us with certain rights. Where did those rights come from? They came out of God's Hesed. A God who values people because they are, not for what they can do for Him. Hesed is the ground of redemption. This was a new discovery for me. 16 times God is asked to save according to His Hesed. Classic example, Psalm 51. Be gracious to me. Remember Exodus 34, 6 and 7? Be gracious to me, O God, according to your Hesed. Blot out my transgression. Wash me from my iniquity. Cleanse me from my sin. Why? On what basis can this rebel king dare to ask his God for that? On the basis of God's Hesed. And I can imagine him then penning the 103rd Psalm that we read from a moment ago. You do not punish us for all our sins. You do not keep account of our iniquities. O God, because I know what kind of a God you are, I dare to come to you on my face and say, O God, forgive me. Without his Hesed, we couldn't go there. Why should I forgive you? What's that going to procure for me? I don't care if you feel guilty. No. Oh God, I know who you are. I know what you're like. And according to your Hesed, I say, oh, save me. Save me. Nothing in my hands I bring, simply to thy cross I cling. You've been patient. This is the last one. And his Hesed is eternal. Again, the refrain, oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, and his Hesed is forever. That refrain occurs 45 times. 26 of them in the 26 verses of Psalm 136. Every verse. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His faithful love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of gods. His faithful love endures forever. Give thanks to the Lord of lords. His faithful love endures forever. Give thanks to him who alone does mighty miracles. His faithful love endures forever. What's going on here? And it's especially interesting that you can read the psalm without that refrain. Listen. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. Give thanks to the God of gods. Give thanks to the Lord of lords. Give thanks to him who alone does mighty miracles. Give thanks to him who made the heavens so skillfully. Give thanks to him who placed the earth among the waters. Give thanks to him who made the heavenly lights, the sun to rule the day, the moon and stars to rule the night. Give thanks to him who killed the firstborn of Egypt. He brought Israel out of Egypt. He acted with a strong hand and powerful arm. Give thanks to him who parted the Red Sea. He led Israel safely through, but he hurled Pharaoh and his army to the ground. Give thanks to him who led his people through the wilderness. Give thanks to him who struck down mighty kings. He killed powerful kings. Sihon, king of the Amorites. Og, king of Bashan. God gave the land of these kings as an inheritance, a special possession to his servant Israel. He remembered us in our weakness. He saved us from our enemies. He gives food to every living thing. Give thanks to the God of heaven. Reads very nicely, doesn't it? And yet, every verse, they stuck that thing in there. His Hesed endures forever. His Hesed endures forever. His Hesed endures forever. What are they saying? Well, I think they're saying, if you want to understand the Creator, the Redeemer, the gift giver, you have to understand his Hesed. It is his Hesed that motivates everything about him. Everything he's done, everything he is, it's his everlasting Hesed that shapes it. They don't want us to miss it. Oh, give thanks because he's the Creator. You know where that comes from? Hesed. Give thanks because he delivered us from Egypt. You know where that comes from? Give thanks because he gives food to the hungry. You know where that comes from? His Hesed is forever. So what should we say? In my study, And you've had these experiences. You've read something 439 times, maybe 440 times. And one day it hits you between the eyes. That happened to me with Psalm 63:3. Your Hesed is better than life. Huh? What? For an Old Testament believer? They didn't have much of an idea of an afterlife. A glimmer here, a glimmer there, but basically this is it, baby. So, you have those Psalms. Now, God, you can't let me die. Nobody praises you in the grave. It's fun to see God allowing inspired people to try to twist His arm. But life is all there is. This life is it. And your Hesed is better than life? What in the world are you talking about? Well, you see, life is kind of short. Now, I know for you young people it seems like forever, but for us old folks, it's pretty short. Supposedly, John Wayne's last words were, "I had no idea it would go this fast." Life has its end. And life is so contingent. We are so dependent on so many things outside of ourselves, physically and emotionally and spiritually, every other way. The cynic said, life is short, brutish, and nasty. Well, most of us probably wouldn't go quite there. But it's true. If life is all I have, that's not enough. That's not enough. But His Hesed is forever. Yes. Rather your eternal Hesed than my temporal, contingent, passing life. This is exactly what John is saying. To live in Hesed. Now, of course, he's writing in Greek. And the New Testament writers, thank the Lord, proceeded beyond the Septuagint. They didn't use eleos, mercy. They used this very rare classical Greek word that sort of meant disinterested love. It's an empty container that they are filling up with Hesed. To live in Hesed is to live in God and to have God live in us. It's what the kids call a no-brainer. My temporal, contingent life, a wildflower of the field that the first hot wind dries up, my life, or God's eternal Hesed? I think I'll choose Hesed. How about you?